Good morning, everyone. Paul Ruppel here with Fox 29 News Now. I hope you're having a great Wednesday. I'm going to take you straight away live to an event that's getting underway in Washington. This will be House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer, representative from Maryland, holding a press conference with other House Democrats on the effect of the ongoing government shutdown on federal employees. It looks like they have the microphone set up. I think I saw Representative Stoyer there. It looks like he is in the just to the left of the camera here. You see his back shoulder. But we will get you to that event as it gets underway. Again, Democrats will be talking about the impact of the partial government shutdown on employees. Of course, this comes on the heels of President Trump's Oval Office speech last night and the Democratic response from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. Let's listen into the news conference here.
We're going to go ahead and get started. The government, as all of you know, is shut down. 800,000 people are directly affected. Over 400,000 of them are working, but not getting paid. The shutdown is a negative, stupid, uncalled for, unnecessary, people-affecting process. Some years ago, Senator McConnell was asked, what do you think about shutdowns? Are you supportive of shutting down the government? His response was, of course not. I am the guy that gets us out of shutdowns. Shutdowns, it's a failed policy. Quote, Senator McConnell, August 28th, 2014, just a few short years ago. Today we have on the floor a number of bills. Tomorrow we'll have another bill, and tomorrow we'll have another bill after that. We will pass 4 bills that the Senate passed 96-2 to open up government, to have our federal employees performing the services for the American people that the American people want and need. Our region, of course, is heavily impacted by this shutdown. And today we stand together with my colleagues here, Representative Sarbanes, Representative Holmes-Norton, Representative Connolly, Representative Beyer, Representative Raskin, Representative Trone, Representative Wexton, and with our good friends, Secretary-Treasurer of the Federal AFGE, Everett Kelly, and President Randy Irwin of the National Federation of Federal Employees. Thank you all for being here, for standing up for the people who are working for us, people who are working for the federal government, people who are relied upon every day by millions and millions and millions of Americans. Because of this shutdown, SEC regulators can't protect retirees and investors. FDA food inspectors can't keep our products safe. Our national parks remain without visitor services, emergency rescues. Security lines at airports are longer, causing delays of travelers. The possibility is that people won't get their refund checks. Approximately $140 billion, average refund $2,500 that people are relying on and that spur our economy. People are worried about whether they can settle on a purchase of a home or a sale of their home. Flood insurance is at risk. This, as Senator McConnell said, is a failed policy. I call on Senator McConnell to pass these bills that his Senate has already passed 92-6. That will open up a substantial part of government. We still have more to do. Now, he has bills over there that would open all of government, but he's refused to put them on the floor. Not because he doesn't agree with them, but because the President of the United States apparently doesn't agree and wants to hold hostage not only the 800,000 federal employees, but the hundreds of millions of people who rely on them every day. I want to thank Representative Beyer for introducing legislation guaranteeing retroactive pay for those who have been furloughed or exempted, and which all of us here are proud to co-sponsor. An overwhelming round of applause have just been received. All of us in this regional delegation will continue to stand up and fight for our constituents who serve in the federal workforce. Mr. President, who's going to want to come to work for the federal government if they think from time to time they can, for reasons understandable to them, they are said, you come to work, you're a critical employee, but by the way, we're not going to pay you. Who wants to go to work for an institution that does that on a regular basis to its people? We are eroding the credibility of the federal government, and we are eroding ourselves as an employer of people who have great skills and serve our people well. We're going to keep doing everything we can in our power to reopen the government so that they can get back to work, get the paychecks they earned, and perform the services for the American people that are critical for them. It is now my pleasure to introduce Eleanor Holmes Norton, the Congresswoman from the District of Columbia, who has a very big voice, great influence in the Congress of the United States, but tragically and very inappropriately does not have a vote. Eleanor Holmes Norton.
Yay, Eleanor. Thank you very much, Steny. And I want to thank my colleagues from the National Capital Region. But I want to say to all of you, make no mistake that somehow we represent only the employees who happen to live, a big clump of them, in the National Capital Region. Every member of the House of Representatives could be with us here today, because every member of the House of Representatives has members, has indeed constituents from every district who are out of work or on furlough today because of this extended shutdown. So we are here to represent all of those employees from across the United States. I do want to personify who these people are, because you keep using these figures, 800,000. It's a very big number. This morning's post features just one of them. She's a shop steward of the SEIU. She's a grandmother. She has 11 grandchildren, 6 children. She's a security guard at the Smithsonian. These are who we're talking about. She, in a real sense, brings to life why we are here today. The President went on the air yesterday, last night, to try to convince us that the government shutdown was not only worth it, but necessary. He failed. And to give you some indication of that, and the time is running out, that's why he went on the air. Because the American people, the polls show, already want their government open. He's trying to prop up the faltering shutdown and wall issue. The Vice President was here in the House of Representatives just on Tuesday to try to hold together the Republican caucus, which is falling apart and falling in our direction, and speaking out about opening up the government, because they are hearing from their constituents just as we in the National Capital Region are hearing from ours. We are told that at least 25 representatives may vote with us on the bill that Steny mentioned to open up the government today. They're hearing from the American people, because it is not just employees. They matter to us particularly. It is services that these employees render. Most important of all, the polls show that the American people want their government open for business as usual. I thank you, and I want to introduce now my good friends, Mr. Sarbanes-Obanorah.
Thank you, Congresswoman Norton. I want to thank Congresswoman Norton for her bill, which would make sure that contractors are paid retroactively. I want to thank Don Beyer for his efforts on behalf of our federal employees. This is not just about making sure that we get people back to work. There's a lot of stress on federal workers because they know the job they need to do. And they know that that work is piling up. They're sitting at home. They're not getting paid. They know that the stack is getting taller and taller. If you're somebody who has to process these tax refunds for Americans all across the country, you know that that work is going to be there. You want to be in your office doing the work. You want to be issuing those mortgage applications. You want to be issuing those permits. You want to be handling the tax refund requests because you have a sense of mission. All the federal employees that we represent, and each of us here today has tens of thousands of federal employees in our district. They are people that go to work every day when they're allowed to go to work to serve the American people. And they have a sense of mission. And it is offensive that this president, who is the leader of the organization, which is the executive branch of the United States government and owes a duty to those workers to let them do their job, that he's holding them hostage based on this idea of building a massive border wall. We need a leader. We don't need a demagogue in the White House. We need a president. We don't need a grandstander. And so, Mr. President, we beseech you, open the government. Democrats and Republicans alike have reached compromise on measures that can reopen the government today if the president would sign that bill. So we ask him to do that. Stop holding these federal employees hostage to unreasonable demands. Be the commander-in-chief. Be the president. Do your duty to the country. Make sure that the services that these workers can provide to Americans all across the country are delivered starting tomorrow. I want to thank all of my colleagues for their representation of federal employees, and I want to thank those employees who are sitting at home today wanting to do their job for toughing it out. We're going to make sure you get your back pay. We're going to make sure that you're respected. That is our mission here as your representatives. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Jerry Connolly of Virginia. Jerry?
Thank you, John. Thank you. Thank you for being here in the midst of what is madness. Lest we forget, this president made it very clear early in his presidency that he believed in good government shutdowns. There is no such thing. It's a mentality he has about government and federal employees as pawns in a bigger game. Well, this is not a game. This is about the contract between the American people and their government. They pay taxes, and in return, they have a right to expect services uninterrupted. We talk because we represent a lot about federal employees. But we also have to talk about the American people who are being injured by this shutdown in a game Donald Trump created. A wall Mexico is supposed to pay for, suddenly we're supposed to pay for, and government has to stay shut down until it is. A wall we don't need, that is justified by racist, bigoted, nativist, xenophobic rhetoric we heard last night on television from the President of the United States. One of the most sordid moments in the history of the Oval Office. Mimicking alt-right bigotry as a justification for shutting down the government and insisting on a wall we don't need, we don't want, and that won't work. Let me just briefly list a lot of the federal services that are threatened for all of the American people. Public health. FDA can't take new regulatory applications, so new applications and new drugs suspended. Food assistance to low-income Americans, jeopardizing nutrition for children and for people at risk. Small business assistance halted. Consumer protections halted. A lot of law enforcement activities affected or suspended, especially in cooperation. National parks, of course, we've seen the headlines about they're unsafe without being patrolled, and they're unclean because trash pickup has been suspended. Environmental inspections stopped. Vehicle safety activities suspended. Home buyers and rental services by HUD suspended. IRS consumer services suspended. These are just some of the services all Americans count on, and the ripple effect of that will continue to grow. There's a simple way out of this. Reopen government, and let's have negotiations about border security across the board with everything on the table. But we're not going to be held hostage, and we're not all going to be pawns in your partisan attempt to redeem what was a phony promise in the campaign to begin with. We're going to build a wall, and Mexico's going to pay for it. We're not on the hook for that. Neither are the American people. Thank you for coming today, and it now gives me great pleasure to introduce my colleague and friend from Virginia, Don Beyer.
Thank you, Jerry, very much. Last night, President Trump gave a speech from the Oval Office, and he talked about a crisis. And there is a crisis, but it's not the lack of a wall. Trump's government shutdown is a crisis, especially for the National Capital Region. I represent about 80,000 federal employees and thousands of federal contractors and the family members. They're getting crushed by Trump's shutdown. Trump said a lot of words last night, but not a single one of them was about the federal workforce. So I'm going to tell you what I'm hearing from them. Trump last night talked about a humanitarian crisis. Well, there's a humanitarian crisis that he created at the border, and there's another one that's being created among federal workers across the country. The phone is ringing off the hook in our office here on the Hill and our office in Alexandria. Calls and letters overwhelmingly opposing the shutdown. I've heard from people living in anguish and fear, not knowing where the money's going to come from to pay their tuition, their rent, their groceries, or their health care. We heard yesterday from a disabled veteran who owns a small business dependent on government contracts. He soon has to decide about whether to lay off his employees. I heard from a contractor who doesn't know where the money's going to come from to pay the health care costs. We heard from a couple, both federal employees, both disabled veterans, who don't know how they're going to make the upcoming tuition payments for their children who go to Virginia colleges. I've heard from a single mother saying they don't know where the money's going to come from to feed their children. Trump says the shutdown is about making the country safer, but it doesn't make any sense if you talk to the people who are furloughed right now. You've heard from furloughed FBI agents, air traffic controllers, State Department officials, TSA workers, Department of Homeland Security, Coast Guard, even Customs and Border Patrol, and they all vehemently oppose the shutdown. Keeping these people off the job and making them work unpaid doesn't make us any safer. And anyone with an ounce of sense would say that sacrificing the service of these trained professionals to waste money on a 5th century wall that can be overcome with a ladder that can be crossed is just a terrible trade-off. Trump has tweeted, he's pitched tantrums, and now he's given an address, and nowhere did he give a compelling reason why the government should shut down, nor have the Republicans in Congress. Every day they refuse to end this shutdown and reopen the government worsens this man-made disaster for our region and for the country. This must end. I'm now pleased to introduce my good friend, the distinguished congressman from Maryland's 8th District, Jamie Raskin.
Thank you, Don. Our regional delegation is 100% unified against the Trump shutdown of public services and lockout of federal workers throughout our region. I've called for a rally tonight in downtown Silver Spring at the Silver Spring Civic Building at 7 p.m. I will be joined there at least by Congresswoman Jennifer Wexton, Congressman Don Beyer, Senator Chris Van Hollen, and others, I hope, will come and join us to manifest public outrage about the scandalous situation that Donald Trump and GOP leaders have left our people in. I just wanted to give you I've been asking my constituents to send me statements about what's taking place in their work lives and their personal lives because of the Trump shutdown. And I just want to share a couple of things I've gotten over the last 24 hours with you, and I'll be doing some more of this tonight. But I heard from a gentleman in Frederick who's a veteran like 40% of federal workers. He's an air traffic controller. He's been doing it for 35 years, and he and his wife have 3 kids, and they've been saving up for them to go to college. One is at Frederick Community College, and one's going to Salisbury University. And he says he's going to have to take money out of their college funds and out of his retirement fund in order to pay basic expenses during this period. He's going to have to pay a 10% penalty for taking that money out early. And even if we are able to pay back their salaries, which we have every intention of doing, they're paying penalties on taking money out of the kids' college funds and retirement funds. And is Donald Trump going to replenish their retirement funds? Is Donald Trump going to replenish the kids' college funds? I heard from a couple where both the wife and the husband are federal employees for more than 15 years. We live paycheck to paycheck with our 2 children. Writes Jill Larson to me. She says, both my husband and I are furloughed. We have had to forego necessary medical treatment as our insurance deductibles have reset, as well as our health savings. We are strapped for childcare expenses, car payments, car insurance, mortgage, health care, prescriptions, groceries, and other bills. These are our people. President Trump has succeeded in doing what no foreign enemy of the United States has ever done, which is to shut down the government of the United States for several weeks to the disadvantage of our own citizens and our own federal workers. It's an absolutely scandalous situation. So we are calling on the Republican leadership today to pass our legislation, which is just a mirror of what they've already passed, so we can reopen the government and end this scandalous shutdown. I'm going to introduce now our wonderful new colleague from Northern Virginia, Jennifer Wexton. Oh, I'm sorry, then you do David.
I'll get David Jordan. Thank you. Thank you. On Sunday, President Trump's message to the hundreds of thousands of federal workers who are going without pay was to make adjustments. Well, making adjustments is not a luxury that many of our nation's public servants have. The men and women who make the choice to pursue a career of public service also often do so understanding that they will make less money than in the private sector. But they answer to the call to serve because they believe in the mission of the federal government and the agencies for which they work. My district, like those of the other metro region members, is home to tens of thousands of federal workers and government contractors. I've heard from hundreds of constituents who are facing financial trouble, who had to return Christmas presents, who are picking up second jobs, who feel like their government and the nation they pledged their careers to serve has betrayed them. Just one example, a married couple who are both furloughed from the Department of Homeland Security. They don't know how they're going to pay their mortgage next month, or even afford their son's preschool. They've requested hardship forbearances on their student loans and are already looking to take out loans from their credit union to make ends meet. But beyond the financial hardships that the family is facing, beyond the added stress and uncertainty, the thing that they took most to heart through this whole process was the feeling that their work didn't matter. Our federal workers and contractors deserve better than to be used as pawns in the president's political game. I call on the president to end the shutdown immediately. And I now would like to pass the microphone to my colleague, Congressman David Trone.
Good morning, everybody. Morning. In 1961, the communists built a wall in Berlin. It wasn't a good idea then. It's not a good idea now. We absolutely do not need a wall for border security. But everybody agrees border security is paramount. We Democrats are committed to better and better border security. But it should be security based on technology. This isn't the 60s. This isn't the wall in China. This is a wall, this is security that can be attained without a wall, security through technology, through drone technology, through scanners on the border, but also for having more people, more workers to process folks at the border. We have to do the right thing at the border and protect it. But just building a wall is clearly not where we need to go. And holding government hostage, it's just not the humanitarian thing to do at all. Our districts in Maryland and Virginia have the largest group of federal workers. But we got to get past the big numbers, 800,000 people out of work, a couple million people affected, subcontractors adversely affected. We need instead to focus on the individuals. The individual folks that go out for a walk on the canal on the Potomac in the morning or a jog, and they can't park their car. They're on the streets. The safety concerns. I think about the prison workers up in Cumberland. Low-paid jobs, union jobs that deserve better pay and better working conditions. But instead, they're not even getting paid. So we're asking them to put their lives at risk every day for low wages, $16 an hour, and not even get a paycheck. So the crisis at the border is manufactured. 2005, 1.2 million people were turned away or apprehended at the border. 1.2 million. Last year, that number was 400,000. Border security has gotten better and better and better. And we're going to continue to make it better. But a wall is not the answer. So let's get America back to work again. President Trump, let's start thinking about people first and not yourself.
Thank you, David. We're now going to hear from the Secretary Treasurer of AFGE, Everett Cowley. Everett.
Good morning, brothers and sisters.
Good morning.
It is time, my brothers and sisters, that Mr. President do his job. That job is to represent the whole country, all of America. Americans want the government open. Our members want the government open. And we need to let the president know we need him to get the job done. We're insisting that the Senate take a vote on H.R. 21 and any appropriation bill to get the government open. We insist that that happens. Federal employees are hurting. Those reporting for work without pay are barely making ends meet. Throw in the additional cost of tolls and other fees to get to work, it's getting astronomical. Real families and real bills are being harmed in every way. And we need to hold this leadership accountable. The shutdown is greatly compromising the future of our government. Who want to sign up for a workforce that says to its workers, you can come to work, but guess what? You will not get paid for it. If current federal employees quit, how is the government going to replace them? Who want to come to work for a government that won't pay their employees? There will be absolute outrage if Google or Amazon would lock out 380,000 employees or force 420 to work without being paid. It would be absolutely outrage. Our average member take home $500 a week. A financial uncertainty causes stress. A financial uncertainty causes anxiety. And this shutdown needs to be resolved, and it needs to be resolved quickly and put those employees back to work so that they're able to make ends meet. January the 11th is the first day that federal employees will not receive a paycheck if the shutdown isn't resolved immediately. We're supporting a House Democrat bill to get the government open, and we demand all lawmakers and the president to come to an agreement and get the government open immediately. Well, someone may be asking, well, what are your members saying? We're representing over 700,000 federal employees, and they're saying that they want the government open. They're saying that they want to get back to work. They're saying that we are patriotic employees and we believe in what we're doing, but we cannot afford to do it for free. Our members are being forced not to work. You know, I received an email the other day from one member who was getting married next year. And they had to make a decision if they were going to pay on the venue which they had been reserving, or if they could put back some funds in the event that they didn't get paid. Well, guess what happened? January 11th, they won't get paid. We have a real issue, and we must get this government back open. I heard a congressman talk about some of the agencies that's affected, such as HUD, who work closely with our nation's citizens The shutdown has brought nearly all programs to a standstill. Department of Transportation, the infrastructure projects, which are often in conjunction with city, county, and state government, are grounded to a screeching halt. USDA, food grains and security workers that inspect our food is at a standstill. We must get the government back to work. AFG is working with a law firm and has filed a lawsuit alleging that making employees work without pay is a violation of the Fair Labor Standards Act. There was a similar lawsuit filed in 2013, and the result of that lawsuit is that we won that lawsuit. We are encouraging everyone to make sure we send a sound to the president. We want the government open. Thank you, my brothers and sisters. Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And our final speaker, and then we'll open up to questions, is the president of NEPI, Randy Irwin.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I want to thank dues-paying members of NEPI IAM. They make it possible for me to be here today. This shutdown isn't funny anymore. It was never funny in the first place, but now it is ruining people's lives. This shutdown isn't funny anymore. 800,000 people across the country, hardworking, middle-class federal employees, have had the carpet ripped out from under them because of this shutdown. It's not right. Their income has been shut off indefinitely until our government is able to be funded and reopened. These are middle-class people. They cannot sustain a loss of their income for days, weeks, months, or years. They can't sustain a loss of their income for any time. It's not funny for them. It is getting very, very real. The president has been out there saying that those who are hurt by this shutdown, don't worry, they're going to make adjustments. What exactly is he talking about? Is he saying they're not going to fill prescriptions that they can't afford anymore? Is he going to say that they're going to start missing payments and ruin their credit? Are they going to turn off the heat in the middle of winter and just tough it out? Those are the kinds of things. That is the predicament that middle-class people are dealing with in this country. Does he not understand it? It's not funny anymore. This shutdown needs to come to an end. They asked him in that same interview just a few days ago, can he relate? He says, yeah, I can relate. Don't tell us that you can relate. Those words don't mean anything. Show us you can relate by ending this shutdown immediately. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Thank you very much. Questions?
Charlie Clark, is there a count on how many Republicans, either in House or Senate, might vote to have a veto-proof majority?
I think we're a long way from a veto-proof vote. But as you saw, 7 Republicans joined us last week in voting to reopen the government here in the House. We believe their numbers are the tip of the iceberg, and we believe there'll be a lot more. We've already seen 4 or 5 Republicans in the Senate indicate their desire, their support for our position, reopen government, and then have negotiations as you will. So we think those numbers are going to grow. My colleagues want to come on up. Other questions? Yes? Yeah. Ever the Randy?
You know, we're keeping them appraised of what's happening. We're day to day. We're letting them know that we're fighting this fight for them. There isn't really a lot that we can do. It's 800,000 people. That's a flood. It's more than any institution can really deal with at one time. So that's the real trouble with it. But yeah, people are just having to do what they can on their own. A lot of them are trying to get little odd jobs. Some are doing things like Uber. Some are going back to photography, doing lots of little things. But that's not really going to address the problem. That's nibbling at the edges. This is a major problem. People don't understand the economic impact of this government shutdown. The last government shutdown in 2013 cost $1.5 billion a day of money, productivity pulled out of the economy. That is a wet blanket on this economy that we don't need right now. It's a huge problem and it needs to stop. What federal employees can do, this and that, it's not enough to make a real difference for how big this problem is.
I just want to add that, last night I heard that, federal employees can apply for food stamps and do all these things. They've had that opportunity before, but they chose to work for a living. They don't want a handout. They want to go to work. They believe in being good, patriotic Americans, and so therefore we want them to be able to work for a living and not receive a handout when it's not necessary.
I might add, for the first time in my 10-year career here in the Hill, I actually have gotten some calls to my office from employers who feel so bad for federal employees that they're offering to give them piecework or hire them for days at a time to try to help ends meet. Yeah.
If the president went through with these suggestions that he would declare a national emergency and then use emergency powers to shift military funds to build the wall, what do you see as the result of that? Would that mean that the government would reopen quickly while the emergency powers issue went through the courts?
I think there are several scenarios, Bob. That's one of them. Clearly, there are some Republicans who are hoping that's what happens so they get off the hook in terms of the government shutdown. Obviously, declaring a national emergency where one does not exist, declaring a crisis at the border where one does not exist, is going to be subject to legal scrutiny. There are also some Republicans, and Mr. Thornberry here in the House is one of them, who have expressed great skepticism about diverting necessary military funds for that purpose. So it's going to be subject to a challenge, but that may be one way Trump tries to save face and get out of this, the real crisis, which is the government shutdown.
Excuse me, but if he did declare the national emergency, then is the prospect that would lead to the reopening of the government fairly quickly?
What I said was that's one scenario. I don't think it's a guarantee. Do my colleagues want to comment?
No, it would still be up to Trump. He'd have to declare the national emergency and then agree to sign the bills to open it up. But he's clearly not going to have much support even among the Republicans for that strategy.
If this shutdown stretches on, obviously this delegation represents more federal workers than anywhere else.
Although it's really important, that's true. But we want to stress, federal employees exist throughout the country. The bulk of federal employees, in fact, exist far beyond the Beltway. And so 80%. So while, yes, we represent a big cluster, and it's very important to the National Capital Region because the capital is located here, we by no means are the only people interested in the fate of federal employees in the Congress.
At what point, is there a point at which you would say to the Democratic leadership, hey, can you just make this end? Would you ever acquiesce if meet the president where he wants to just end this shutdown?
I can only speak for myself. The president created this crisis. We had a clean funding bill pass the Senate, ready to pass the House, and the White House said they'd sign it. He pulled the plug because of 3 or 4 right-wing talking heads who scared him with his own base, and he pulled the plug without any warning to Republican leadership as well as ours. And that's one of the reasons why Mitch McConnell's face is now on milk boxes all over America.
And let me just add, too, that Democratic leadership from the beginning has said that they're willing to look for solutions. We're very much committed to border security. I heard yesterday we spent $40 billion on border security since 2005. But we're so far, when Nancy Pelosi, Steny Hoyer, what they have said is there's been absolutely no movement from the White House on any issue. So, Trump says he's I know he didn't write the art of the deal, but I don't think he read it either. There's been absolutely no willingness to come together and create a win-win situation for the people of America.
It's whenever the Republicans shut down government, and they've done it many times, they always try to minimize the pain so that people don't notice. I can remember in the last big shutdown the Republicans had, I think in 2013, the Republicans objected to the Park Service putting up signs saying closed due to government shutdown. Well, there was a government shutdown, and they had caused it, but they didn't want the public to have to see that. And so I think the same game is going on now. So let's not interrupt the food stamps now that we think about it. Let's make sure tax refunds are processed if not other kinds of tax activity at IRS. I think all of those are questionable activities. I think they further degrade morale in the federal workforce, and I don't think the American public is fooled by it. Yeah. Look, our Democratic position is we want to reopen government. We can start with one carve-out, and I guarantee you're going to end up with hundreds. And the people that Everett and Randy represent, and we all represent, they all want to be treated with respect equally. And so getting into that, while you can make a case, I think also is, in some ways, the road to perdition. Let's reopen government right now for everybody. Any other question? Yeah. Let me just, I'm going to answer that. Don Beyer issued a great statement on it. That's an individual choice by a member of Congress, but it's also, frankly, a distraction from the real issue. We're not in the business of adding to the ranks of the unpaid. We're in the business of getting everybody paid fairly. And this question gets asked not only with respect to shutdown, but shouldn't you not be paid if you don't pass a budget? Shouldn't you not be paid if the Dreamer Act isn't passed? And go down your favorite list. And the Constitution mandates it. We're doing our job. We're here trying to reopen government. And we respect individual choices, but frankly, we think that question is a distraction from the main issue in front of us. All right. Thank you all so very much for being here today.
Thank you. David.
You've been watching House Democrats and union leader talking about the impact of the partial government shutdown on workers, federal workers. Of course, the shutdown is, I believe, in its 18th or 19th day now, and no end in sight. Let's get you off there. Paul Ruppel here with Fox 29 News Now. Shot just came back. We'll leave it there while we talk a little bit. Again, that was members of the House of Representatives, Democrats, talking about the impact of the shutdown, trying to get into what some of the personal stories and effects that this is having for people in their in the areas they represent in Washington, D.C. You heard a delegate to the House of Representatives from Washington, D.C. Talking about the impact as well, and at least one union leader. They, of course, are reacting to some of what the president had to say last night about the immigration crisis and that he wants that solved before he is willing to reopen the government. Of course, the president asking for about $5.7 billion in border security wall measures. He's talking more about a steel slat wall at this point. If you missed the president's speech last night, here's some of what he had to say. He addressed the nation from the Oval Office in his first major address in the presidency in more than 2 years in office.
My administration
he laid out his case for the border wall among a host of other issues the nation is facing, and here's what he had to say.
To secure the border and stop the criminal gangs, drug smugglers, and human traffickers. It's a tremendous problem. Our proposal was developed by law enforcement professionals and border agents at the Department of Homeland Security. These are the resources they have requested to properly perform their mission and keep America safe. In fact, safer than ever before. The proposal from Homeland Security includes cutting-edge technology for detecting drugs, weapons, illegal contraband, and many other things. We have requested more agents, immigration judges, and bed space to process the sharp rise in unlawful migration fueled by our very strong economy. Our plan also contains an urgent request for humanitarian assistance and medical support. Furthermore, we have asked Congress to close border security loopholes, so that illegal immigrant children can be safely and humanely returned back home. Finally, as part of an overall approach to border security, law enforcement professionals have requested $5.7 billion for a physical barrier. At the request of Democrats, it will be a steel barrier rather than a concrete wall. This barrier is absolutely critical to border security. It's also what our professionals at the border want and need.
There's a sampling of what the president had to say. Ms. Trump added that the wall would be paid for, quote, indirectly by a great new trade deal with Mexico. He's referring to the, I believe it's the MCA deal that has been negotiated but has yet to be approved by Congress. He also stopped short of declaring the immigration crisis a national emergency, which could have given him presidential powers beyond, to override and go around Congress to some extent and draw funds from other sources in order to begin construction, perhaps with the help of the Department of Defense, of the wall that he desires along the southern border, the southwest border. You're looking live at the White House. There is a vote scheduled, I believe, later today, Democratic measure that would reopen certain segments of the government. There is the possibility of some defections by members of the Republican members of the House of Representatives. So we'll see how that goes down later today. We'll be following that. Of course, you can always get the latest on the shutdown and just general politics overall and national news. We have a national news section on our website, fox29.com. And of course, we always bring you stories of national importance on our newscasts. Fox 29 News at 5, 6, 10, and 11 each night, and on Good Day Philadelphia in the mornings. Let's take a quick look at weather here. Here's a live look out of the Benjamin Franklin Parkway, looking up to the Philadelphia Museum of Art. Currently, it's 46 degrees outside. Dew point is 28. Winds out of the west at 19 miles per hour. So pretty gusty out there. Make sure you bundle up before you head out the door. Seeing a live event getting underway, trying to figure out what that is, but we'll keep ahead with weather here. There is a chance of some snow later this week. Here's a look at our Fox Futurecast. See, the snow chance arrives later in the day on Saturday into Sunday. Of course, Sunday, a lot of us will hope to be around our television sets watching the Eagles take on the New Orleans Saints in the divisional round of the NFC playoffs. It looks like this is going to be the live event I mentioned. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer, joined by furloughed federal workers. And they're going to be holding a media availability to discuss the Trump shutdown and its negative effect on American families. So we'll come back to weather and some local news, but looks like they're getting into position here. While we're waiting for that to occur, I do have a package online here about migrant reaction to the president's speech last night. Let's watch that, and then we'll get you to the workers' reaction here in a bit.
President Trump laying out his case for a border wall on Tuesday night. Reaction was predictably mixed, but there's agreement on one point, the growing humanitarian crisis here at the border. Thousands of migrants are still waiting in makeshift camps and shelters for their chance to apply for asylum, a process that could take months or even years.
Nosotros We aren't criminals. The 3 or 4 examples he mentioned don't mean much.
We left our country looking for a better life, and it's not easy.
Americans who live in border areas also reacting strongly. Many who support the president say it was exactly what they wanted to hear, while others claim he's not doing enough to help the migrants and needs to soften his tone.
There's different facets to border security, but we definitely need it, so I'm completely behind him 100%.
I'm a Mexican American. I'm a descendant of Mexicans, and so it makes me feel like I'm not valued.
There was one major issue the president didn't address: any announcement about the details of the lines a proposed wall might follow. That has some landowners near the border worried about their homes and businesses.
I didn't see any announcement. I was actually expecting some. There were rumors that he would be talking about various elements of the border eminent domain.
Democratic lawmakers are now pushing the administration to offer more aid to the migrants who are waiting their chance to apply for asylum. At the U.S.-Mexico border, Jonathan Hunt, Fox News.
Again, that was Fox News correspondent Jonathan Hunt, in part talking to some of the thousands of migrants from Central American caravans still waiting to cross into the U.S. Some of them are camped just south of the border in Tijuana, and they reacted strongly to the president's address on immigration. As you saw, he also had some reaction from local landowners. Part of the wall construction would require taking of land from private landowners and others. So they of course have feelings about the wall and project and live in close proximity to where some of those crossings are occurring. So wanted to get you some reaction there. Again, we're waiting for an event to begin live. This will be Speaker Pelosi and Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer speaking. They're joined by furloughed federal workers, and they're holding a media availability to discuss the what they're calling the Trump shutdown and its negative impact on American families. Of course, not all the workers have been furloughed. Many are being pressed into continued service work during the shutdown. There have been some reports of sick call-outs among federal employees, some of whom are TSA agents who man security at the nation's airports. My guess is, let me take a look and see when this is going to get underway. If it's not until 11, we'll take you somewhere else for a little bit while we await the start of this event. Doesn't necessarily have a start time, so let's get you back to some weather like we were talking about, and we'll come back circle back when that's live. This is a look outside our studios at 4th and Market in Old City, Philadelphia. Look towards the east, some blue skies there. A little bit of clouds, but mostly blue sky. We've seen some sunshine today. Looks like we might be under one of those clouds at the moment. Here are your current temperatures around the region. As we mentioned, 46 in Philadelphia. Lower 40s to our north and west. 33, just 33 up in Mount Pocono, but mid to upper 40s along the New Jersey coast. There you see some cooler air to our north and west. 30s in Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Toronto. We do expect a cool down later this week. And your U.S. temperatures. As warm as 71 in Miami and as cool as 7 in Minneapolis. 50s along the Gulf Coast, 59 in San Francisco, 42 in Portland. Minneapolis, definitely the coldest place on the map. The only place in single digits on of the noted cities here. Let's take a look at those wind speeds we were talking about. Looks like we're currently at 20 miles per hour sustained in Philadelphia, 25 in Atlantic City, 29 in Mount Pocono, teens some other locations. And here are your gusts to 35 miles an hour right now in Philadelphia, 40 in Atlantic City, 38 in Toms River, 39 in Mount Pocono, so 36 in Wilmington. So bundle up if you're headed outside. It is brisk. After we got to, I believe, around 50 degrees yesterday. And we're at 46 right now, but it's not going to feel like that outside. In fact, let's take a look at the wind chills. 38 in Philadelphia, 39 in Wildwood, 39 in Atlantic City, just 19 in Mount Pocono. See, not too much cloud cover over the area right now. A little bit of a break from the clouds. So visibility not too poor at the moment. Let's get you a look at our 7-day forecast from the Fox 29 Weather Authority. Wednesday, today's going to be sunny and blustery, 40s. Calling it a 7 in our forecast by the numbers. Another 7 tomorrow, sunny and windy. Thursday, 37. Overnight low of 30. Friday, sunny and cold, just 33 degrees. Saturday, as we mentioned, we're watching that chance of some PM snow, 32. Snow chance carries over into Sunday, 33. Monday, 35, sunny and cold. And same for Tuesday when we'll get up to 40. See some of those overnight lows dipping down into the teens perhaps in the Monday. So make sure you watch and stay with us. Download the Fox 29 Weather Authority app to get the latest conditions and forecasts. Our video forecast is in there. You can watch our live stream as well during our newscasts to get the latest conditions and forecast as we move towards a potential snow event. Don't know if we had any in December. I know we did in November. We'll have the full forecast for you on our shows. Here again is a look at the Futurecast, so you can see what we're talking about there. Potential for some accumulating snow. Looks like there's also possibility of some mixing down in South Jersey and Delaware. While we're waiting for this event to get underway in D.C., where House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Minority Leader in the Senate, Chuck Schumer, meet with furloughed federal workers, let's show you a little bit of the House news conference, the House Democratic news conference that occurred a little bit earlier. I believe this is Hakeem Jeffries speaking. And we'll jump into a little bit of this, and we'll take you to the furloughed workers event as well.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the inaugural press conference that will be held on a weekly basis by our Vice Chair, Catherine Clark, and myself. Today we're pleased to be joined by two very distinguished members of our dynamic freshman class who you'll be hearing from momentarily. We had a very active discussion in today's caucus meeting, focused largely on two things. First, on the continuing effort by House Democrats to end the reckless Trump shutdown. We also are continuing to move forward with our affirmative, forward-looking agenda to deal with kitchen table, pocketbook issues connected with our For the People agenda. We had a very robust discussion during the months leading up to the November midterms about what we would do to make life better for everyday Americans, focused on lowering health care costs, protecting people with pre-existing conditions, strengthening the Affordable Care Act, a robust bipartisan infrastructure program, and cleaning up corruption here in Washington, D.C. We continue to focus on those things as we deal with this reckless Trump shutdown. This is day 19 of a Donald Trump-inspired shutdown that is solely the result of a presidential temper tantrum because of the president's inability to extract $5+ billion for a medieval border wall. No one outside of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue thinks that this border wall is in any way effective in terms of dealing with improving border security on our southern border. Democrats have consistently indicated that we are willing to substantially increase funding for border security that takes the form of enhanced technology, drones, satellites, cell phone towers, reinforcing existing fencing and barriers that currently are in existence. But we are not willing to waste taxpayer dollars on a medieval border wall that is a 5th century solution to a 21st century problem. And we are certainly not willing to reward a presidential temper tantrum that has shut down the government for 19 days. Because real Americans are being impacted. Tax refunds are delayed. Farm subsidies and assistance delayed.
So you're hearing some of the same themes here from the Democratic leadership that you heard during the news conference that was held by Maryland Representative Steny Hoyer, the majority leader in the House. Let's get you some local news while we're waiting for that event out, the other event with the furloughed workers to begin in D.C. This is our Lauren Johnson this morning reporting, following up on one of our reports from the Fox 29 News at 10 last night. The Upper Darby community is coming together to protest the firing of 2 football coaches. Last night, members of the school's football team even attended last night's school board meeting. Here is Lauren's report from outside the high school earlier this morning. Let's listen in.
Well, here's the deal. It was a pretty solid turnout. Speaking to people attending that meeting last night, parents, students, and the football team in attendance to express their displeasure to terminate 2 beloved coaches. The head coach of the football team and assistant coach are being let go after next season, and the community is standing behind the 2 men at the meeting. They're asking the board to reconsider that decision to let the men go. And those who are protesting the move say this decision came with really no time for them to digest at all and no explanation, so they showed up in pretty big numbers to the meeting to defend the men.
Announcing the decision on the global connect and saying the district has a different vision? Are you kidding me? That's how you treat someone like that? With that kind of work and pride in this district?
I think they're just giving them a hard time because they got embarrassed. Because for my $9,000 in property taxes, my son's locker room looks like garbage. I would have never known that because I don't go in the locker room. And I think that they're just embarrassed and they're making him a scapegoat.
Coaches just don't do X's and O's. They are mentors to these children. They help these children. When there's no fathers in their homes, they are replacement fathers for these children. I think it's deplorable what happened to Coach Gentile and Coach Rufinat. It's despicable.
As a parent, I'm absolutely disgusted with how the district handled the firing and I'd say sensitive pushing of Coach to be retired next year. He didn't deserve that. He's given everything to this district.
I just think this was the wrong decision to be made, and the school board should take a serious look reversing this decision.
Rich Gentile has been a coach and teacher since the 90s. The district announced before Christmas that after next season, he will no longer be the head coach. As for the assistant coach, that's Eric Rufinach, well, he was simply fired. And there's some rumors swirling that this all happened after he posted pictures of the locker room and the conditions there. The school board president says she cannot comment on personnel issues. So we will have to wait and see exactly how this plays out. But for now, two men who parents say were more than just coaches, they were mentors, role models for these young boys, are now going to be out of jobs, and it's going to leave a big hole in this community.
Again, that was our Lauren Johnson reporting from outside Upper Darby High School about the firing of those two football coaches and the strong community reaction to those firings. Get you a little more information about some, these are follow-ups on a couple of stories we've been following here at our station. Both a viewing and a funeral will take place today for the remaining victims of the Packer Avenue crash that killed 3 people on January 2nd. Funeral services were for 35-year-old Kelly Wisely will be held at Holy Cross Church in Springfield today. The viewing for 31-year-old Dennis Polandro Jr. will also be held today, starting this evening, with his funeral services taking place at St. Monica's Church tomorrow morning. His wife Nicole is the only one who survived the crash. She remains in critical condition. Next story, the Philadelphia Medical Examiner's Office has ruled the death of a man killed over a fight about an unleashed dog a homicide. Police say another dog walker punched 38-year-old Drew Justice in the face at Gold Star Park Saturday after Justice asked him to push his dog on a leash. The blow to the face caused Justice to fall backward and hit his head on the ground. Investigators are reviewing the case with the district attorney's office to determine if anyone will be arrested. And a warrant has been issued for Johnny Bobbitt after he didn't show up for court yesterday. Bobbitt is the homeless man from Philadelphia accused of being a willing player in a GoFundMe scheme. Prosecutors say Bobbitt, along with Kate McClure and her ex-boyfriend Mark D'Amico, made up a story that raised more than $400,000 on a GoFundMe page. They allegedly spent the money on luxury items and casino trips.
Okay. Services.
Apple is set to reduce production on 3 of its new iPhone models through March, and the fate of Sears lies with its chairman as the company is set to participate in a bankruptcy auction. Fox Business Network's Tracy Carrasco has more in today's Morning Business Outlook.
Hopes for a trade deal lifting stocks for 3 days in a row. The Dow up 256 points on Tuesday. The Nikkei Asian Review reports that Apple has reduced planned production for its 3 new iPhone models by about 10% for the January through March quarter. This after Apple slashed its quarterly revenue forecast last week. Apple attributed the dismal outlook on weak iPhone sales in China. And the future of Sears could rest with its chairman. The struggling retailer has agreed to let billionaire Eddie Lampert compete in a bankruptcy auction on Monday that will determine whether Sears stays in business or is forced to liquidate its remaining stores. Sears independent board members and creditors want to wind down the business, but Lampert wants to keep 425 stores open. Sears filed for bankruptcy in October. For more, log on to foxbusiness.com. In New York, I'm Tracy Carrasco.
House Democrats are obviously working hard this morning to try and rebut some of what the president had to say, holding multiple events on Capitol Hill and around the country. Here is House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, as we mentioned, speaking, joined by the minority leader in the Senate, Chuck Schumer, and furloughed national federal workers. They're speaking at an event right now with them. Let's listen in on what they have to say.
Instead of facts. The reality is that the president could end the Trump shutdown and reopen government today, and he should. Instead, he is holding the American people hostage to his ineffective, expensive wall and withholding paychecks for hardworking Americans. To some, he is saying, work without a paycheck. To others, he's saying, just stay home. In all of those cases, he's being unfair, not only to the workers, but also to the American people whose services he is depriving, and also to our economy. The president's manufacturing crisis reaches into the lives of millions of Americans. It threatens services and benefits they need to stay healthy and secure. It robs hardworking Americans of their paychecks. Some we will hear from, like Steve Reeves and the 3,200 workers of the AFGE National Local 4060, Holly Salamito and the 5,000 workers of AFGE Council 222, Eric Young and the 3,200 men and women of AFGE Council 33. These numbers are numbers to you, but they are people. They are families. They are resources in our community, and we'll hear from them. And of course, we're very, very honored to welcome J. David Cox, who represents the 700,000 American Federation of Government Employees. Later today, congressional Democrats will go to the White House. We'll have given the president a Republican path forward. We have said to them, we are willing to accept what the Senate Republicans have passed overwhelmingly in the Senate. We'll take your path forward. Take yes for an answer. Instead, he has chosen a wall over workers. The president needs to end his senseless shutdown and reopen the government. And a champion in making that distinction for the president. You want to negotiate on the wall? Let's proceed in a way that is respectful of our security and respectful of our values. I'm pleased to yield to the distinguished Democratic leader of the Senate, Senator Schumer.
Thank you, Leader Pelosi, and I want to thank everyone here from AFGE, J. David Cox, and the great workers. And these are the people this is all about. These are people, it could be a cloudy Monday morning, rainy. They have 100 fever, but they go to work because they believe in what they are doing. They know how important it is to the American people. And to use them as hostages through a temper tantrum by the president is just so wrong, so unfair, so mean-spirited. It ought to end, and it ought to end now. Hundreds of thousands of federal workers are furloughed. 100,000 more are working without pay. In a short time, they're going to miss their first paycheck. And when you multiply those federal workers by their family members, the people they love and care about and who rely on their steady paycheck to survive, you get a better sense of the pain that the president is causing with his shutdown. We've been joined today by men and women who are really dedicated in our VA hospitals and in FEMA and in EPA and in federal prisons. The people behind me represent the real human collateral damage of President Trump's temper tantrum. The president speaks all the time using this shutdown to make our border secure. But the dark irony is he's forcing TSA agents, CBP officers, and prison guards to work without pay. Tell me how that makes America more secure. So the president needs to come to his senses and end this shutdown now. I don't think he persuaded a soul with his talk last night. It was same old, mistruths, divisiveness. Didn't have the effect he had hoped. Speaker Pelosi and I are ready to pass legislation, already approved by Senate Republicans, to reopen the government. And while we continue the debate on border security, we all want border security. There are different views on how to get there. But to hold these people hostage, instead of just letting them do their jobs, which they want to do while we work out our differences, so wrong. Why should we ask TSA officers to go without their hard-earned pay while they protect our airports? Why should we ask food safety inspectors to go without their hard-earned pay while they ensure the food we eat is safe? Why should we ask prison guards to go without their hard-earned pay while they keep the public safe? It makes no sense. None of these things have anything to do with a $5 billion request to fund the wall, which, of course, Mexico is still not paying for, despite what the president said last night. The House passed legislation to reopen the government. It's time for President Trump, our Republican colleagues in the Senate, to accept it. My message to President Trump and my Republican colleagues in Congress is simple. Our federal workers just want to do their job. It's time that you do yours. J. David Cox.
Thank you so much, Leader. Good morning. And I truly want to thank Speaker Pelosi and Leader Schumer for inviting us here today. Federal employees are absolutely, completely, and without reservation opposed to this government shutdown lockout. And it is a lockout, brothers and sisters. Whether we're being forced to work without pay or locked out of our jobs and prevented from going to work, we want this shutdown lockout to end this very minute. We don't just oppose it because we're not getting paid, but that would be reason enough. We don't just oppose it because we're being kept from doing our jobs on behalf of the American citizens, but that would be enough. We don't just oppose it because it makes a mockery of our democracy and our government, but that too would be reason enough. We oppose it for all those reasons plus another very important reason. One, we oppose being held hostage. We oppose being collateral damage. We oppose the use of extortion instead of reasoned debate. We oppose politicians who think so little of us, our work, and the institutions of government that they think nothing of bringing whole government departments to their knees. Let's be vigorous in the debate over budgets and taxes and spending and border security. The Senate is the greatest deliberative body in the world, and so is the House. Oh, Madam Speaker, I was getting there. But let everyone make their best arguments. Try to persuade people. That's our system of government. That's the system of checks and balances in our government. But do not hold the government hostage. Do not hold our tax dollars hostage. Do not hold federal employees hostage. Do not hold our members' paycheck hostage. This morning, you'll hear from real federal employees who will tell you what's happening all across this country as our members try to figure out how to pay their bills this week without a paycheck on payday. You're going to hear from Eric Young from the Bureau of Prisons and Holly Salamito from HUD and from Steve Reeves from FEMA. And you're going to hear what this shutdown, and it is a lockout, feels like, what the damage it's doing to real people whose average take-home pay is $500 a week. Real families, they need their jobs, they need their paydays, they want to service the American people, and it's time for this lockout to end. Thank you so much, Madam Speaker and Mr. Leader. Thank you.
We'll stay with this event a little bit longer. While did want to hear from some of the furloughed workers. We've heard a lot from Democrats on this stream today. Let's listen in to the workers now.
Council Prison Locals. We represent 32,000 bargaining unit employees inside our nation's 122 federal facilities. Federal correctional workers are the lowest paid federal law enforcement officers in government. Many live paycheck to paycheck. Our law enforcement officers start at a low pay scale, at GS 5, 6, 7, as Jay David stated, averaging between $500 and $700 a week. Many of our professionals are single mothers who are being forced to work without pay and still have the responsibility to pay for child care and other expenses like gas to get to work. There are mom and dads who are, in the most cases, a single sole source of income in their household. The workers taking care of their families, their children, the elderly parents. Veterans make up 30 to 40% of our federal workforce. Our veterans took off from their uniforms in the military to put on their uniforms in our American prisons, supervising some of the most heinous criminals in this society than most law enforcement officers would see pretty much in an entire career. Yet our pay is held for ransom. So this shutdown must end. Allowing this shutdown to go on any longer is completely unconscionable. This underfunding, the lack of staffing is so bad, we have secretaries, cooks, and teachers filling in every day behind missing correction officers. This shutdown only makes it worse. So what does it serve America's public to shut down the government in the name of border security and neglect our internal security and the fabric inside of our federal prisons? We are the faces behind this shutdown. We are the real people working in the Bureau of Prisons and the Transportation Security Administration and other federal agencies today, doing so without federal pay. In this shutdown, if something happens to any of our professionals behind this distraction, blood will be on your hands. Stop playing chicken with our lives. Well done. I'd like to introduce Holly Salamino.
My name is Holly Salamito, and I serve as the president of AFGE Council 222, representing more than 5,000 employees across the country who work at the Department of Housing and Urban Development. This is a very difficult time for HUD employees. Many HUD employees, some of whom earn between $40,000 and $50,000 a year, live paycheck to paycheck. Employees can't make their car payments. They can't pay their daycare providers. If you don't pay your daycare provider, you lose your slot, and that is serious business. With the length of time this shutdown has gone on, people are going to start missing their mortgage payments, which could affect their credit rating. These financial impacts are serious and long-lasting. We've asked employees to share some of their financial difficulties, but in many cases they're embarrassed or ashamed to publicly disclose that they live paycheck to paycheck. In addition to federal employees, the people that HUD serves are impacted. HUD's mission includes serving some of the poorest people in America. I am told that building inspections are not taking place. HUD has oversight responsibility for public housing authorities, and if there's a problem, there's no one at HUD to call. In some cases, people are facing eviction. The repercussions of this shutdown are real, and we need Congress to reopen the government immediately. Thank you.
Well done. Thank you.
Mr. Reeves from FEMA.
My name is Steve Reeves. I'm a 23-year Army veteran who joined the civil service after retiring from the Army. I'm here today as the leader of the union for FEMA. We have more than 3,200 employees at the Federal Emergency Management Agency. We're just recovering from one of the most active hurricane seasons in recent memory, not to mention the historic wildfires that have devastated California. Ordinarily, this is when we restock, this is when we rest our people, this is when we prepare for the next big disaster. What this means is,
it looks like we lost our feed there. Just went away. The Democrats leadership there meeting with furloughed workers, talking about some of their personal experiences and some of the problems that they're encountering as a result of the government shutdown now on day 19, I believe. We'll see if that feed comes back, but it looks like it's down for the moment. Democrats actively pressing their case today. I don't know if they're sensing weakness in the aftermath of the president's speech last night, or just trying to project strength as they approach some votes in the House to try and reopen portions of the government. They would like to reopen certain sections of the government, but leave the border discussion as a policy debate, as they stated in their response to President Trump's speech last night. That's why they would leave certain entities of the government, like DHS, Department of Homeland Security, closed for the interim, or funded just for the short term, I should say, until February, I believe. So we'll see what comes of that. The event doesn't seem to be coming back, but I can tell you that we have another one that was just occurring simultaneously. This was Mayor Bill de Blasio. He proposed health care for all in the city of New York. Today he's proposing New York become the first city in the nation to mandate paid personal time for workers, saying that more than 500,000 full and part-time employees in New York City currently have no paid time off. Let's listen into a little bit about what New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio had to say. This is jumps into his remarks a little bit. It was from a couple minutes ago, but let's listen in.
We're going to talk about something groundbreaking. We are literally talking about something that's the first time any city or state in this nation has done what we're about to do. But you know, New York often leads the way, don't we? Yes. Are you ready to lead the way? Yes. Can't hear you. You ready to lead the way? Yes. I believe you now. For the first time, we will be the first city or state in this nation to guarantee all workers 2 weeks paid vacation. 2 weeks paid personal time that they can use as they see fit. Because it's 2019, it's time to treat people decently. It's time to value people. Not just see them as cogs in the machine, but people who deserve to live life fully. I want to thank, first of all the folks behind me, because they've been fighting for this kind of change. They've been fighting for workers to be treated decently, to have a decent quality of life. Give each other a round of applause. Thank you for all that you're doing. I want to thank a number of members of my administration. You'll hear from Commissioner Salas in a moment. I also want to thank Deputy Commissioner for the Office of Labor Policy and Standards, Liz Vladeck, for her key contributions to this effort, all the members of my administration who worked on this. I want to acknowledge and thank Councilmember Ben Kalos, who is a believer in this type of approach, and thank you for your support. You're going to hear from some of my colleagues in a moment. But let's talk about what's going on here. This is a crisis. This is a crisis for families all over this city, all over this country. Family life is deteriorating. People's quality of life is getting worse and worse all the time. People are working harder and harder. Have you noticed that with the advent of more and more technology, more and more demands, people are working longer and longer hours and get less and less time for themselves? Have you noticed that?
Again, take yes.
Is that working out for you?
Yes.
Is that working out for you?
Yes. Every Republican voted in the Senate to keep the government open.
It's a struggle just to make ends
McConnell
meet.
Put the, 30-day extension.
And that means something's broken. Something is not working. Something cannot go on this way. We can't keep making the same mistake over and over. That is the famous definition of insanity. Cost of living alone is forcing people to work harder and harder and harder. And when do they ever get a break? When do they ever get a break? Imagine this for a moment, my friends. It's 500,000 people. I always like to give you the comparison. That's more than there are people in the whole city of Miami. 500,000.
Again, you've been listening to New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio talking about being the first city in the nation to mandate paid personal time for workers. This is a proposal He wants to pursue local legislation that would require private employers with 5 or more employees to offer 10 annual days of paid personal time and allow employees to take paid time off for any purpose, including vacation, religious observances, bereavement, and time with family. The legislation would guarantee this time for approximately 3.4 million New Yorkers, according to the mayor's statistics. It looks like Democratic leadership is back talking about in the aftermath of the furloughed workers. This is what we were watching earlier. Let's listen in for a short time, and then we'll get you a package wrapping up talking about the government shutdown. Looks like they are done speaking right now. Let's take you back to the de Blasio event for a moment or two. Let's listen to what Pelosi is saying here. If we can hear. It doesn't sound like we've got audio there, a microphone that was able to pick that up. All right, that event's breaking up. One of the workers in New York is talking right now. Let's listen in. This is after Bill de Blasio's remarks about the paid time leave. Looks like someone is speaking after him. Let's listen in on what she has to say.
And it's so powerful for me to be here on behalf of the union and standing in New York City with leaders like Mayor de Blasio and our council, while we're also facing Washington, D.C., where the folks in charge there every day show that they don't care about workers, they don't respect people or their humanity. And New York City is once again saying, not here. Here in New York, we respect the lives of the people who make our city run. So thank you, Mayor de Blasio, for prioritizing this and pushing this through. Council members Jumani, Williams, and Helen Rosenthal for sponsoring this legislation, and we will work day in and day out to make sure this gets passed through the City Council and all workers in New York City are treated with the humanity and respect they deserve and can take a time to be with their families. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to take questions on today's announcement, then we'll take some questions on other topics after. Questions on today's announcement, Rich.
Mr. Mayor, you mentioned phasing this in smartly, I think is the word you used.
Correct.
What does that mean in terms of time?
Well, the great model we have is the paid sick leave legislation, which turned out to be a tremendous success. And I want to thank all the members of the council. We together determined something that was fair to workers, but also worked for the businesses. And what we've seen since has been a very, very positive history since then of people using paid sick leave when they needed it and businesses continuing to thrive. So that phase-in, I'll have the commissioner talk about the details, but that phase-in gave time to educate the businesses, get them used to how this was going to work before the enforcement actions began.
Yes, I would just say that we spent probably the first year after the law became effective just doing outreach with businesses and making sure that they understood how to comply with the law, providing them with tools to really make it easy for especially small businesses to do it in a way that was not disruptive to the models. And for the first year, I think it was very successful. We only started really I would say more like looking into penalties and things like that after that. But we spent a lot of time participating in business meetings, doing trainings and seminars, and we will continue to do those things with this new law.
So just to be clear, when did the penalties start? When does this?
Right. So for the 2014, when the law became effective, we spent almost a full year just focusing on outreach. We would take complaints, right? But I can tell you that since then and through, I would say up to maybe a few weeks ago, the numbers were close to $8 million in restitution that we've obtained for workers, and a percentage of that, $1 million or so, were in penalties. So the focus has still been in making sure that the right is available for workers, and in some cases we have assessed penalties, but the focus is on making sure that the right is accessible to workers.
So what does that mean for this?
Okay, but let me clarify. There's got to be a legislative process. So What we're doing today is making clear this is going to be a priority of this administration, and we're going to fight very hard for this. But I think it's also fair to say the council is already sympathetic to this idea. Had a good conversation with Speaker Johnson about it yesterday. There will be a legislative process. As with any major piece of legislation, it's important to go through details, look at all of the different elements. One of the things that Speaker Johnson and I talked about is the fact that here in New York City, I want to echo Jamani's point, here in New York City we have crazy, wacky things like legislative hearings for major pieces of legislation. We have debate. We allow the different stakeholders to come in and talk about what matters to them and how it will play out, as opposed to some of the stuff we see in Washington, D.C., where huge pieces of legislation now are happening without any normal legislative process. There's going to be a full process here. So, Rich, the answer we were giving before is that we think the paid sick leave model of how to implement, how to phase in was very positive. We think that's a good one to use in this case too, but there has to be a whole legislative process. Yes. Well, and Jamani's the lead sponsor along with Helen. I would say this is one that I hope can be resolved in a matter of a few months, personally. I can't speak for the council. They have their own process. But I would like to see this happen in the next few months. I think it's something, because we have a positive history with paid sick leave to work from, because the need is right now. I mean, remember, the faster we pass this, the quicker workers in New York City will benefit. Hopefully it's something we can get to over the next few months. I also want to acknowledge and thank for joining us Councilmember Adrienne Adams. Thank you very much for being a part of this today. Okay, over there, David.
Mr. Mayor, two questions. Are there legal challenges that come with this proposed legislation that weren't there for paid sick? I mean, can you do this unilaterally to require time off?
You mean, can the city of New York legally? Yes. Yes. Per the law department, yes. And I think we had the same questions, obviously, at the time of paid sick leave, and you've seen it was not only passed, but it's gone 5 years without being successfully challenged. So we are confident.
My second question is actually for Allison Hirsch.
I'll give you some height.
Okay. Many unions have paid vacation for their workers of 2 weeks or more. Why is it that your union hasn't been able to secure that in negotiations, and why is it appropriate for the city to step in here?
So our union actually has been able to secure that in many of our negotiations, but we believe that all workers should be able to benefit from that, right, whether they're in a union or not. You know, the idea of a city legislative process and government is government should set a floor upon which all people can stand. And so we think all workers, whether they're in a union or not, should have a baseline of respect and paid time off, and then where it's our job to negotiate above that floor if we're able to do that. And many of our members do have this time already, but all workers deserve it.
Please.
Thank you. It reminded me of something I want to say of the importance of this and how it's going to have a compounding effect. As Allison mentioned, unions shouldn't have to negotiate for things that are such a need. Paid sick, and I shout out obviously the Board President who helped get that done, but paid sick shouldn't be, a few days shouldn't be what people are negotiating for. Getting time off for mental health day or taking time with your family, you shouldn't have to negotiate that. Paid family leave, you shouldn't have to negotiate that in your contract. There should be a floor that was mentioned that people are negotiating from so they can focus on other things like salary, other type of perks. But there should be a baseline that is not a perk, that is just given. And that's why this piece of legislation do this way is helpful.
Yes. So again, I would say very similar to what we experienced with paid sick leave, that strong educational effort for workers to understand their rights, and strong educational efforts for businesses to understand their responsibilities. And then obviously, if we ever see a situation where that's violated, Department of Consumer Affairs will step in. That could be because of worker complaints. That could be because of ongoing surveying to see what's happening. But I think so far the track record's been pretty promising on that example of paid sick, and we think on this one we'll be able to enforce it effectively. Gloria.
Mayor, how did you get to that 500,000 number? How do you know who these employers are, and how is I understand that it's going to resemble the paid sick policy, but
Okay, can we just do the first part? I'll come right back to you. Lorelei or Liz, who can speak to how that analysis that got us to the 500,000 worked?
So our research staff at DCA's Office of Labor Policy and Standards used national data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the census that established the rates at which workers are entitled to paid vacation in various professions, and we applied those rates to the New York City labor market. We think 500,000 is a conservative estimate, and as we move forward, we'll be prepared to talk in more detail about what exactly the breakdowns are.
So what kind of workers could this be? Are these retail workers, food workers?
Yeah, I gave you some examples before, and I'll simply repeat them. I mean, again, I don't want people to have the misunderstanding it's only low-wage workers, because it actually cuts across a surprising swath of the income spectrum. As I said, there's a number of workers who make even between $50,000 and $100,000 who do not have paid personal time. A lot of our full-time workers, even more of our part-time workers, and I want to remind people, a lot of people right now are working multiple jobs. They're stitching together multiple jobs, including multiple part-time jobs. If you're working a bunch of part-time jobs, you're still working full-time, you still need time off. So that's why we want to apply it to the part-time workers as well. Our estimate is almost half the restaurant and retail workers in New York City do not have paid personal time, overwhelmingly fast food workers and non-union hotel workers. So it's a range of workers, different industries, different income levels. But again, as Liz said, that 500,000 number may even be conservative.
One last thing. Is there a minimum that the city...
All right, Paul Ruppel here with Fox 29 News now again. We've stayed with that a little longer than we anticipated, but discussion there with New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio talking about paid family leave. His proposal to, paid personal time for workers. Wants to offer that to more than 500,000 full and part-time employees in New York City and get businesses on board with that. We've had a lot, as I mentioned, a lot of Democratic activity this morning on Capitol Hill, especially talking in the aftermath of the president's primetime speech from the Oval Office. Here's a wrap-up by Fox's Lauren Blanchard of the shutdown issues as they stand. Has a little bit of reaction from both sides. Here you go.
Following the president's primetime address last night, President Trump today will not only meet with Senate Republicans on Capitol Hill, but also will continue negotiations with congressional leaders at the White House. The biggest problem remains the border wall funding.
President's fighting not just for the wall, but he's fighting for border security. He's fighting for the protection and the safety of every American citizen.
We should be investing in the technologies necessary to combat bad guys. Building a wall is fulfilling a campaign promise. That is not securing our borders.
This week, House Democrats plan to pass another round of appropriation bills to reopen parts of the government.
To have our federal employees performing the services for the American people that the American people want and need.
However, Senate Leader Mitch McConnell has said he will not put any legislation on the floor that does not include wall funding.
The $5 billion is not just to throw it out there to waste money. It is what it costs to fund the top 10 projects in a much broader program.
On Thursday, the president will be heading to Texas to see a portion of the southern border. While the White House says they want to work with Congress, they're still weighing the option of declaring it a national emergency. In Washington, Lauren Blanchard, Fox News.
Hello again, Paul Ruppel here with Fox 29 News Now. We want to get you, let me take you quickly to, this is an event that's occurring in Aubrey, Texas. This appears to be a train derailment. We're hearing that, let me get the details on this. A train went off its tracks just behind homes in the Denton County city of Aubrey this morning. Several rail cars piled up along the tracks near West Pecan Street and South Main Street there. Some of the cars appear to miss a building by a few inches. We're not hearing of any injuries at this point, but we'll get you more information as it comes in. we'll have see there the train cars off the rails, coming right to rest against what appears to be both a business and a home there. So I hope everyone is okay. We have a little bit of breaking news in our area. Unfortunately, I don't have much more information to share with you, or video of the of what's occurring at the moment. Let's fix that there. We're hearing that there's been a crash involved after a chase in Delaware. The chase began in Delaware, ended in the area of West Oregon Avenue and Broad Street. The Delaware State Police was in pursuit of a vehicle. That vehicle has crashed, and there may be some police officers injured at this scene. So we will bring you, I don't believe we're going to have video from the scene in the short term, but we do have a crew on the way. We'll bring you the latest on fox29.com and Fox 29 News at 5, 6, 10, and 11 tonight. But again, we're hearing that a vehicle pursuit has ended in the area of West Oregon Avenue and Broad Street in South Philadelphia. We do hear that there are suspects in custody. There may be some injuries to police. So we will if we get video from the scene, we will bring that to you on our Facebook page and website. And we'll have updates for you. Follow us on Fox 29 Philly on Twitter and our Facebook page, and we'll bring you all the latest information on that incident in South Philadelphia. We're going to sign off for now, but thank you very much for joining us today on Fox 29 News Now. We're with you weekdays after Good Day Philadelphia ends. Try and bring you live events from around the region and any updates on stories that we brought you during the course of the day. I hope you have a great rest of your Wednesday. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again tomorrow.